All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Managing Customers for Growth. My name's James Flaherty and I'm your facilitator for today. Alongside me I have Stephen Eager, Managing Director of MYP Corporation. Welcome along, Stephen.
Thanks very much, James.
MYP Corporation are a Queensland business based in Murray that specialise in the management of information for small and medium businesses, and then the utilisation of that information to grow business, to build opportunities and to increase the profitability of your customers. Their focus really is around making your business smarter, your information work harder and using what you know to grow your business. They're also a CCIQ partner and have worked with CCIQ on a range of initiatives across the last 2 years, from the implementation of the CRM systems we use within CCIQ through our event booking services through to business benchmarking software and the research tools we use to undertake items such as our pulse survey of business conditions. Before we start, just a few tips to make sure you get the best out of today's webinar. The webinar will last for approximately an hour. There'll be a Q&A session towards the end of the presentation, and you can send through questions at any time during the session today. There'll be a text box on screen. Feel free to just type those questions through as they come up, and we'll try and answer as many as we can at the end of the session. Following on from the presentation, we'll send out either later today or first thing tomorrow an email which will contain the slide deck. It'll contain a link to an audio recording of the webinar itself, plus an offer that we'll be putting to you as CCIQ associated businesses later on today, and you'll be able to find a little bit more about that later on. So let's start things moving. Stephen, can you please start to explain exactly how business owners and managers that we've got online with us today can start using their information about their business to help grow their sales and revenue?
Absolutely, James. Look, thanks everyone for your time. Look, one of the amazing things about business is that we know at an intellectual level that business isn't really that complicated. The reality is, however, it just doesn't feel that way. And we know when we're deep in what's going on a day-to-day basis, we can sometimes feel overwhelmed. You know, we've put together this conceptual pyramid here that looks at how businesses evolve over time. The reality is, though, that whilst most businesses evolve to a point, they don't necessarily evolve as far as they need to or would like to. And so the thing that we know is in Australia there's about 2.1 million businesses, and pretty much every one of them, and probably the vast majority of the people that are attending this webinar, their businesses started with one or two people who were good at doing something. And because they were good at something, there were people that would consume the product or service. And as the business grows, then they start to do other things like employ people, have to deal with systems and financial issues and so forth. And so they move from this phase that we call individual competence to one we call leverage dysfunction. And the reason it becomes a bit dysfunctional is because they stop doing what they were really good at, which is what brought customers in the first place, and start to do more of the things that they're comfortable or with or less confident about. And our experience is that across those two categories, individual competence and leverage dysfunction, there are probably about 80 to 90% of all businesses in those categories. Perhaps 10% or that sort of number get to a level of what we call organisational competence, where they get to a scale where they can start to employ people who have deep knowledge in particular functional areas of business. But we can tell you there's probably less than 1% of businesses that get to the top of the pyramid here, and we call that systemised intelligence. And an organisation in that space, aside from having the right people in the right roles and all that sort of thing, they've gone further than that. And they've been able to take their ideas and their processes and so forth and build business models and business engines out of that that enable them to run extremely efficiently and effectively. And what we're all about is about trying to help organisations get to the top of that pyramid, because it's in that space that we find that organisations become truly profitable.
And look, I think that's something we hear a lot from our members. You know, they start a business because they're good at something and have a real skill that they can take to market, and then all of a sudden they get into that leverage dysfunction stage, and it's all of the things around running a business that seem to stop the business growing. It's worrying about your taxation and your compliance and your red tape and your health and safety and your contracts and everything that is there, I guess, that you have to do, but ultimately puts a brake on what they want to do, which is their core business, and to grow that part of their organisation.
And the tragedy of that is that if we all think back to the days when we first started our business, we're full of passion and enthusiasm and all that sort of stuff. And over time, it's all of those other layers of issues that start to wear us down. And so many business owners get to the point where they feel controlled by their business rather than they feel they're controlling their business. And a key part of all of that is actually controlling the way in which you engage with your clients, the way you manage information and so forth. So let's start this journey. Hopefully that little, I guess, conceptual background there has given a bit of a base for this conversation to go forward on. Okay, some interesting research. The Harvard Business Review recently reported on a study that was conducted with over 25,000 businesses. And what it was looking for was what truly made the really good, profitable organisations that were sustainably profitable, what made them unique. And the fundamental, if we break down the report into its absolute fundamentals, it was 3 key rules. Firstly, revenue before cost. Now, we all know how important it is to manage our costs, but for those organisations where that's the focus of their energy, those organisations fundamentally struggle, because at the end of the day, you can cut costs as much as you like, but if you're not actually making money, you're still going to lose money. So the point that they made was that the absolutely best performing businesses, every business decision was made in the context of how is this impacting on revenue, not just what's its impact on our cost base. So that's rule number 1, and that's where we're going to focus our conversation today. The second rule is better before cheaper. And the key issue there is not that price becomes the sole differentiator of your point of difference, okay? Because if you are focused on price or cost of what you're offering to your customers as the basis of differentiating your service, you are not going to be a high-performing business. Now, there are plenty of business models where they provide a very low-cost offering, but the focus of their business is not we're going to be cheap. They're trying to differentiate in other ways. Now, we're not going to get into that part of the conversation today, but those are the fundamental 2 rules, and to highlight that, they've even made rule number 3, there are no other rules. So fundamentally, if all of the core decisions that you make in your business around your business model and your approach to business are around the concept of revenue is a prime driver, and better, or our differentiation points, are the prime drivers. If those are the 2 key areas that you're focused on, the probability is you're going to build a sustainable business. All right? Now, I said the focus of today is on how we grow revenue. But before we start into a sort of analysis of that, I actually want to challenge you a little bit. And I want you to just think about your business before we go. So rather than this just being a talking head session, I want you to think about your business. Firstly, in the next minute, so let's just pause for a second. I want you to now put your business in context here. In the next minute, could you identify, value, and dashboard or report all the sales or revenue opportunities across your business? So if I said go, in the next minute you've got to be able to come back and show to somebody the value of all of the opportunities that sit in your business. Now, I know that's going to be a challenge for a significant number of you, and the reason I know that's a challenge is because we do a lot of work with accounting firms, and I probably have asked that question to 200 or 300 firms. And you know the number of accounting firms that have been able to say they could do that? 0. Okay? But if we don't know this information, we've got major challenges in being able to drive a revenue strategy in our business. Okay, so that's question number 1. So it's a yes or no answer. Could you do it? Question number 2, Can you identify every opportunity your business currently has, what stage that opportunity is at, the history behind it, and its value? Yes or no? Question 3. If something happened to any key member of your team, would somebody else be able to immediately access the issues behind each customer, the opportunity, or the tasks themselves, what has to be done by when, etc.? Yes or no? Can you identify which areas, products, services have the most opportunities so you can manage future resourcing? Now, it's all well and good to know what was sold in the past, and whilst history is a predictor of potential future activity, it's much better to actually understand and know what is in our pipeline and what type of resources, skill sets, etc. we need in our business to take advantage of those opportunities. So again, do you know this information? Yes or no? Now, for those of you that have been able to say yes to all of that, that's fantastic. You've made huge strides to where you're trying to get to. What we do know is the vast majority of people have probably said no to all of those. Don't feel bad about that. That means you've got a fantastic opportunity ahead of you. The reality is, as I said before, 80 to 90% of businesses sit in that category between individual competence and leverage dysfunction, and that means the vast majority of businesses don't have the infrastructure they need to take them to higher levels of performance and profitability. All right, so why is it that businesses struggle to grow revenue? Now, most people have heard of the law of 80-20, or what's commonly referred to as the Pareto Principle. And basically what the law of 80-20 says is that irrespective of your industry or your business, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. All right, so let's just think about that for a second. If you think about the top 20% of your customers, again, irrespective of your industry or business, those are the customers that you know best. All right, you understand each other, you have a close relationship. Many of them you would probably call professional friends or even friends, and they're the ones that you support the best. Unfortunately, the other 80% are often people that we really don't know, and we have what I would call a very reactive relationship with them. And so typically they're more the type of client where we become, or the type of customer where it's more of an order-taking type relationship. Now, many people think of the law of 80-20 as some sort of law of nature. You know, that's how businesses work, it's 80-20, and that's just how it is. Well, we don't actually agree with that. We think that the concept of 80-20 is more driven by a law of capacity rather than a law of nature. And that's because this is the limit of our business systems and our people manage those quality relationships. You know, if you're the owner of a business, there's only so many people you can know that well and have that personal relationship with, or so many that your salespeople can have, and so on and so forth. But again, what we argue is this is an issue of efficiency and effectiveness and productivity, not a law of nature written in the commandments. Okay. The reality is if you could actually change that to the law of 60-40, where 60% of your revenue comes from 40% of your clients, you would more than double your revenue. Okay. Now we've obviously just shown that graphically there. We can see there on the left-hand slide, or the left-hand diagram there, 20% generating 80 and the 80% generating the 20, and then moving to the other side. The really exciting thing about this is genuinely the case. Now, when you think about how you grow revenue in your business, you fundamentally got three choices. You either keep the average sale and increase the number of customers you have, you keep the number of customers and grow the average revenue they pay you, or a combination of the two. So what we're talking about here is the ability to retain the customers you have. This is not about winning another customer. This is about keeping the ones you've got and significantly increasing the revenue you generate from them. We've just got to get you thinking differently about it. Now, one of the things I'll give you a secret on, we do a lot of benchmarking. And we know that across the country and across every industry that the top performing businesses spend 50% less on their labour costs as a percentage of their revenue. Now this is not about necessarily the size of business, this is about the efficiency and productivity of business. And so if you think about that particular point, if you could double your revenue without increasing your labour costs, that's what the top performing businesses have achieved. All right, let's keep going. So if we take a simple example of the law of 60-40. So what we can see here is this is all about the power of leveraging your customer base, not trying to get just more out of the top 20. It's not to say we won't get more or shouldn't get more out of the top 20, but it's looking at your entire customer base. So under the 80-20 rule, let's just have a very simple example here. 100 customers with an average revenue of $1,000. So clearly we've got total revenue of $100,000. The top 20 customers generate average revenue of $8,000 and everyone else is $200. If we apply 60-40, what we know is if our top 40% of customers, so previously it was the top 20 generating 8, and now we're saying the top 20, and we've got a significantly reduced average, so the top 20 are only generating $5,000 each. That gives us $200,000, so that alone has doubled our revenue. If the other 60% of our client base pay us an average of $1,300, we've nearly tripled our revenue. I can tell you now, this should be a fundamental metric or a measurement in nearly every business, but I can guarantee you there is almost no businesses that actually focus on this particular metric. Focus on getting your top 40% of your clients generating 60% of your revenue. And another key thing about that is it changes the way you're forced to engage with your clients. Because if you're going to get 40% of your clients paying you this sort of revenue, you've got to engage with them differently because you don't have the time or resources to do it the old way. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to everyone.
I think the thing I'd like to add in there, Stephen, if I can, is firstly there's a whole heap of marketing tomes and books that are written about how you leverage your customer base more. And the one thing that they always say is there's a huge propensity, I think it's 7 or 8 times more likely to be able to increase the revenue from an existing customer than you are to go and get a new customer in through the door. So firstly, when people look at this and say, well, I can't go from 80-20 to 60-40, you absolutely can, and there's a whole heap of research out there that proves that it can be done. And the second thing I like about your model is you're reducing the risk that businesses face. And we see businesses closing, you know, every day and every week they're in the news because a major customer has walked away. If you can diversify your revenue across 40% of your customers as opposed to 20% of your customers, your risk to your business of suffering a major downturn because one customer is no longer with you is hugely reduced. So it's a really good opportunity to look at how you can change the customer mix and you know, lessen the risk on your business because of the, you know, sensitivity to a small customer set.
Absolutely, you've absolutely nailed. That's a critical risk mitigation strategy. Diversify the relationships with your customers. The other critical thing about all of that as well is pretty much every business, if you look at where your new customers come from, they come from happy existing customers. Now typically they come from the ones that we have the closest relationships with. So again, if you just apply a mathematical equation to all of this, if you've got 100 customers and you've got a close relationship with 20 of them, they're potentially the ones who are introducing your new customers. If you've improved your relationship more broadly across your customer base, you've now to simply as a mathematical formula increase the probability of introductions to new customers through that strategy. You know, if you think about the money that people spend trying to win customers, it's huge compared to the amount of money they spend improving the engagement and quality of the relationship they have with existing customers. All right? So these are all critical and important things to understand. All right, so if it's all so simple, why do businesses struggle to grow? So, you know, when it comes to the selling conversation, too often people get hung up on having a conversation with their client that's purely about what they're trying to sell them. Okay? You know yourselves, when you're sitting down in front of somebody and it's purely a straight sell and they're interested purely in talking about themselves, that you're turned off. All right? The first thing in growing revenue is, for any of us, is that we have to understand our customers. And that means listening to them, giving them the opportunity to express a point of view, and so on. So for too many organisations and businesses, it's about lack of understanding of their customers. And you think about all of the organisations that you interact with and engage with, and how many of them actually genuinely understand you and are authentic in that process. Secondly, ineffective communication, and this is across the board, whereby we don't provide a range of opportunities for our customers to engage and communicate with us and vice versa. Thirdly, time wasted completing manual and duplicated tasks. Now the thing about business is it's this living, breathing organism, and everything that we do is connected to something else we do. And so there are ongoing cause and effect type relationships. If we are inefficient and unproductive in the way we do things, it means that's going to flow on to our delivery with clients, their experience they have with us, the time that we have to work on our relationships and so on. So everything in business is ultimately connected. That relates to the next point, projects and tasks are managed inefficiently. Same principle. Here's a critical one. In most businesses, information is siloed, so people keep it boxed up in their area, and other people don't have access to that information. Now, in many organisations, this is unintentional. You know, it's simply that's the way we work and we haven't thought about it. In other cases, it's intentional. People have power by managing and controlling information. The bottom line is the most effective organisations are transparent, okay, in terms of information and access to the information that's relevant to them. This is not necessarily saying everybody gets access to everything. It's about ensuring that people have access to the information that enables them to be efficient in the way they work, the way they communicate and engage, not just with clients or customers, but with other staff and so on. And obviously, the last point there, the more inefficient staff are in what they do, that leads to a higher cost per dollar of revenue. Okay? So there's some of the reasons why many organisations struggle to really focus and drive growth. Okay, so there's got to be a better way. Hopefully we haven't put you to sleep at this particular point, but there are two key takeouts from the law of 80-20. And if you take nothing else out of the conversation today, these are the critical points. Firstly, know and understand more of your customers deeply, not just the top 20%. And once you make the mental note to do that, then that's going to change how you do things, all right? Because you can't develop that deeper understanding and do that efficiently, because this is not about saying, okay, well now we've got to put on a whole bunch of new salespeople. It's about identifying other ways of engaging and managing the information around those customers. The other critical thing here, and I mentioned before, that the top performing businesses spend 50% less on their labour costs as a percentage of total revenue. And what they've done is they've leveraged their expensive assets, people and capital, with their less expensive assets, which are information, their systems and their intellectual property. Now personally, I've sat on probably a couple of hundred boards of companies, and the nature of people and boards is to focus on those assets that have the highest cost, because they're obvious, they're tangible and they're expensive. The key thing here is understanding, particularly in the digital age, that you have the ability to leverage those expensive assets by spending a hell of a lot less on your less expensive assets. Now your information, your systems and your IP, they certainly still have some cost, but the variable cost of those assets is massively less than your people and capital costs. I'm going to give you a very quick example. I often talk to people about the concept of the capitalised cost of labour. Now when people think about employing people, they think of the wage cost. So let's say we've got a person that costs us $50,000. the capital cost of that labour is what we could borrow and have the same cost in our business. Now, if we assume that interest rates for business are around 7 or 8%, that means we can multiply that cost by around about 12 or 13 times. So if we say the cost of labour is $50,000, the capitalised cost of labour is going to be around $600,000 to $650,000. Now I can guarantee that everybody sitting here, if we said we want you to go and borrow $650,000 to invest in something for the business, you would think very, very seriously about it. But how often when we're busy in business do we think we're so busy we need a new person? All right? When the alternative may be to think about how we can be more efficient in the way, more productive in the way we, and the infrastructure that we provide our staff, the way we engage with our customers and our approach to doing that, okay? That's a really, really important point to understand. So the two key things: know and understand your customers deeply and the way you engage and connect with them. Leverage your expensive assets with your less expensive assets. So how do we do this? And we're going to run through this reasonably quickly. Firstly, understand your customers and segment them into various groups based on how well you understand them. Remember, every business has different types of customers, and to treat them the same means that's a fundamental problem, because they have different needs, different expectations, and they want different types of relationships with you. And it doesn't matter whether you're a hairdresser, manufacturer, a sales organisation, it doesn't matter. All right? Every organisation should have a very, very clear understanding of who their customer base is, what makes each of those customers different, and what they're looking for from you. And that goes to our next point, which is relevance. So the first step, if we look at this, this circle over here, this process, first step is understanding. Second step is relevance. Now that you understand that segment, what is it that you do that's going to be relevant to them? Because there's no point engaging with them with something that's not relevant. Okay, that's going to turn them off, it's going to waste their time, and it's going to waste your time. Thirdly, provide a service or product that the customer actually values. And if we actually understand them and we're only putting in front of them what's relevant to them, they're going to value it. Okay? And remember, value has a lot of aspects. It's not just the price point. It's all of the emotional aspects, the attributes that are attached to what we're bringing to the table for them. So people put value around something that's much more than cost. That's where the issue here is not just talking about price as your point of differentiation. Okay. Communicate with these customers and segments in a relevant way and enable them to communicate back. Keep constant lines of communication open, because there are days that we stuff up. There are days that we do things well, and there are days that we don't. And again, can I tell you, research shows us that screwing up with a client is typically not fatal. It's what we do after that that actually gives them the greatest sense of satisfaction, because research has shown that clients are happier when we've made a mistake and what we've done to fix it, the response. Okay, we might have a client that we've done everything perfectly with for 10 years. They may have a lower level of satisfaction than somebody where we screwed up, but we overcompensated for that by the quality of fixing the problem. Okay, really important to know that. Capture customer communication and opportunities and measure performance. Measure, measure, measure. There's no point just putting your team of salespeople out there to sell something and we're not actually tracking it and understanding what they're doing and what their conversion rates are, and are they actually capturing the information that they should be capturing, etc. Last couple under this one. This is critical. If you don't have the infrastructure to enable these efficiencies to take place, to enable better communication and engagement, then you are so far behind the 8 ball, it's not funny. Your ability to put yourself into a position of being a top performing business, frankly, it can't happen, because there is no way your cost of labour can be brought down as a percentage of your total revenue if you don't have the infrastructure to drive performance. And as I said before, if the decision that you're making next is, do I employ somebody to take up the work we've got, you should be seriously looking at whether or not that cost, or some of that, a fraction of that cost, is going to be better served in putting in place more efficient processes, systems, technology, etc. If you're going to manage your customers for growth, what you have needs to be inexpensive, efficient, and this last point's a critical one. It needs low training overhead, because if every time someone leaves, it's really expensive for you to get them trained and up to speed and all the rest of it, you're going to face a dilemma, because you're going to face the decision, do I go through this process of getting them trained or not? And as soon as you're faced with that dilemma and you start deciding not to train people and not to take advantage of all of your systems and processes, then you're on the slippery slope to being in trouble. And the final point there is it's got to be part of your culture. If you've put in place an infrastructure, then there is no choice for staff as to whether they follow it or not. All right? It's not negotiable. Because if you don't have a culture that says we're going to be systemized, efficient, capture critical information, use that information, measure people against it, etc., then there is absolutely no chance that you'll be in the top quartile of businesses. Okay? All right, as James mentioned at the start, we're delighted to have been working with CCIQ for a number of years now, and we've been talking for some time about the challenges facing small to medium enterprises and the sort of tools and information services they have available, and this has been a really critical driver within CCIQ, that they've wanted to be able to put out a solution that actually brings to the table some of these things. And so we've been able to package up a solution with CCIQ that is low cost, high value, easy to use, has very low training overhead, but it brings to the table all of those critical tools that address the issues we've talked about. Customer relationship management, sales and marketing tools, broadcast campaigns, etc., event management if it's relevant, project and task management, actually managing the jobs and operationally managing. Document management, making sure you've got access to all of the right information in the right place. So these are all things that are part of the package and bundle that we've put together in the special CCIQ package. So hopefully that has been useful and interesting. What we're going to quickly do is give you a couple of looks at slides. Now, this is not exactly how it is. There's a bit more colour and so on that normally sits around some of these screens. We're going to quickly take you through just a few slides to show you the sorts of things that you can do to manage information. Now let me assure you this is the very, very tiny tip of the iceberg, but the ability to manage all of your clients and contacts, to put them into different categories and segments, to be able to bring together in the one area for that client all of the relevant clients or staff of the contacts, any linkages between anybody in your database and any person or business, track all of the opportunities that you have, the projects that you're running, anything that you've done in the system, anything you've sent out of the system, all of the documents that are relevant to that particular client. So here in one little hub, you've got the ability to effectively manage a significant proportion of everything that's going on in relation to those particular clients. You've got the ability, as I said, under the opportunity space here, to capture a whole heap of information from where the opportunity came from, which staff member is responsible for it, what's the value of the opportunity, what's the probability of success, having automated reminders, so when you need to do a follow-up, you get an automated reminder to follow up so things don't just get left behind. The ability to allocate tasks to opportunities, put prices to them and so on. You've then got the ability to run projects, so you can set up any project that you like, all of the tasks that sit around that project. If there are jobs for clients to do in this environment, you can set it up so that clients are automatically notified when they've got jobs to do, and you can manage communication with the client all within this particular framework. Lots of different reports. So I talked to you before about being able to go away and in a minute come back with all the information about the opportunities. The reality is you should be able to do that in about 15 seconds. So you can go and filter all of your opportunities by source or stage or type or teams or client or whatever it might be, and instantly get dashboards, get a list of all of the opportunities which you can click on those and it takes you into all of the detail that sits behind it. Or if we're running our projects, the ability to manage projects really efficiently, where again you can look at it by project or by staff member, by team, etc. And you've got an instant visual there as to are the projects on schedule, are people doing what they should be doing, etc. It's all about giving you, the owner, control of your business and its information, and getting the right information to your staff. Again, you've got all of the jobs and tasks that need to be done, by whom, by when, if any of them are overdue, and again, all of that's hyperlinked, so you just click on any of that and you can go into those fields. So that's a quick overview of MYP, just a couple of quick slides, but more importantly, there's a whole heap of information there about what you can do. Fundamentally, running a business can be very simple, but we've got to have the tools, the infrastructure, and the strategies in place to enable us to take back control of our business.
And look, to give you a bit of context on this, when we first started working with Stephen a couple of years ago, we were using a system from one of the leading CRM organizations. It was costing us well over 6 figures per year to run. It didn't have the ability to really give us a 360 view of our customers. So from the 1st of June this year, we actually implemented this system within CCIQ. And on every single metric that we have within our business, we have seen a significant improvement across the board. We've seen our membership churn half over that time because we know more about our customers, we know more about our members, we know the services that they're using, we know what they need, we know how to interact with them. We have a complete history and track record of them. And we also put in a culture where we're updating the information about our members at every single contact point we have with them. So if you phone into CCIQ and talk to Michael or Devon, they will update your information. If you talk to our employer assistance line team, they will put a history in of how you've contacted them and the issues and so on. So that in theory, if somebody leaves our business tomorrow, it should make and will make zero impact on the knowledge that we have within our organization about any of our members. We've seen an increase in people attending webinars, in attending events. We've seen our satisfaction increase and our measures just go through the roof across all boards. But one of the challenges I said to Stephen is we deal with small and medium businesses, so any product that we use can't be then used for our members at a rate that's going to cost them 6 figures because it's not sustainable. So we sat down and we worked out a product and we worked out a plan that will enable you to have access to a CRM solution, able to have access to an e-marketing solution which links directly into your CRM, so you can email on a mass basis, you can email individuals, you can keep a complete history of your records, you can store your documents, you can even run events through the system and have people make bookings and payments and all sorts of things. This system it's a standard CRM on steroids, to be honest. But the beauty of it is we can, because of our partnership with Stephen, we can retail this from about $160 per month, which is a staggering improvement on the 6 figures that we were paying per annum previously. So we've put this offer together. I'd encourage you all to have a look at it because an investment of $160 a month that could potentially help you grow your sales by a significant number from going from 80-20 to 60-40 is a really sensible investment. You will have to make an investment in time and you will have to make an investment in culture, but ultimately they're investments that you need to make anyway in order to get out of the ceiling that businesses find themselves in because of all the things that are going on around just running your business. We've got a really good slide at CCIQ that we use in presentations where we've mapped out exactly what goes on in a small business's world, and it starts off with an idea, a product, and it takes to market, and very quickly the page fills up with everything from school fees to taxation to mortgage payments and so on. So anything that can help you simplify that whole world that you guys have to deal with is a good thing, and I think this product can certainly do that. We'll now move on to the Q&A because we've had a whole heap of questions come in over the time. So we'll start off, Stephen, if I can, with a question from Stephen, and it's around the product itself. Is the product cloud-based so that mobile staff can access it and use it on the road?
Absolutely. So you can access it anywhere in the world where you can access a browser. So you can access it on your iPad or your your notebook, your computer, your phone, etc. So as long as you can access a browser, you can access the system.
A question in from Shannon, and that's around the cost of the system for just one user, and I'll answer that one. So Shannon, that $160 a month will cover a certain employee banding,
1 to 9,
which is 1 to 9, and then there's a slightly more for the next band, slightly more for the next band. But the 3 bands of cost, the most expensive is $300 a month. So what we've tried to do is keep it as low cost as we can, based around the number of users you use. So it certainly isn't, 100 times 160 if you've got 100 staff members. We've had a question in from Gary around, we've had a couple in from Gary actually. So firstly, does the system link with Outlook Calendar?
No, that's one of the tasks that we have over the next few months, is to do that. One of the things that we found, however, just on that, it's a really interesting point, is that people can actually do a lot of the communication inside our system. So that, for example, if you're running projects or jobs with a client, you can actually set it up so it's like a ticketing environment. So rather than communication with lots of different people all over the place, you can actually run that communication straight from inside our projects tab, whereby if you set up a task for a client or make a change or put a note in, you can automatically notify the client if you wish it to. They can click on a link, go in, put their notes to it, and it provides a stream of communication. So your worst case scenario at this particular point is a cut and paste out of Outlook of a new message into the relevant space, but certainly that is on our development agenda going forward over the next 6 months or so.
And I think to back that up, how we use it is we have it set up so that alerts are sent to specific users' emails. So if an inquiry comes in, it's distributed to a relevant distribution list, and then that is then queued within the system and used from there. So that there are very good linkages. But just on Stephen's point there, what we find is it's almost like dealing with a cloud sourcing development. So the MYP are very good at having a relationship with all of their users, and they're very good at looking at system improvements, and system improvements are released on a weekly basis. So if there are suggestions around that and there's a groundswell from the users to do it, then Stephen's team are very good at implementing those changes. A second question in from another question in from Shannon. So does the system link to other programs such as SASE for accounting?
Yeah, we already have links with Xero. Our own personal system is connected to SASU. We haven't, for those that are familiar with the terminology, it's called API, so it's an integration protocol. So we've done some integration with MYOB, some integration with Xero. We will be doing an integration with Xero more broadly. As I said, we've done an integration inside our own business, but that will be an API. Look, again, the issue around the integration space, we obviously enable easy transfer and upload of data. You can import and export data out. Your worst case scenario is that you can drop your data into a spreadsheet template and upload it. But again, it can all be very efficiently managed. And as I said, over time, we're doing more and more integrations with different pieces of software.
A question in from Gary around what is the best method of defining the top 40%? Should they look at turnover, number of sales, so for example over 5 years, or sales over 1 year? And is it the person or the company that the metric should be against?
My personal view with this sort of thing is, whilst history, as I said before, has some predictive qualities, to me it's more about looking at the organisation from the point of view of what is its potential. And whilst some of that is told by history, some of it isn't. And so I think the key there is, again, all of these sorts of factors need to be taken on board. But the first thing is the ability to actually have clarity around your customers and have that level of understanding and ensure that that information is captured. I mean, one of the things we see constantly is that the culture of organisations is they think that selling is some sort of dark art. My best salesman is the person who goes out there and he has great relationships, but he's really terrible around process and systems and all the rest of it. The bottom line is this, that culture has to shift, because part of the problem around that is that some of those best salespeople also hold the owners of those businesses to ransom. because they see themselves as the asset rather than the business. And the reality is it's a combination of the two. And the more we can put in place systems and processes and infrastructure that provide transparency and so on into the information that often sits in the heads of these people, the more critical it is. So anyway, short answer on that is I think it's more about being aware of what organisations have done with you in the past, but it's more about the potential of what they could do with you, and whether that's driven around the person or the business, I think it's on a case-by-case basis.
Just a follow-up point on that, a question from Lester is around culture being a key ingredient, and any suggestions or experience you've had from people who've implemented this this system, from how they've gone about changing their culture and removing bad habits?
Sure. There are two parts to this. One is inspiring them and getting them enthusiastic about what you're doing, but the second part of it is then not allowing people to undermine it. There's a fundamental principle. People change for two reasons, vision or pain, all right? And the vast majority of people change through pain. You know, it's unfortunately when we're about to have a problem, whether it's our health or relationships or whatever, that we're suddenly inspired to make something different happen. As the leader or the owner of a business, you can't wait for people to feel pain before they change, okay? You've got to drive change, and that's what people in organisations are looking for. And if you've got people in your team, now there will be some people that will be resistant to this because they're not naturally dotters of I's and crosses of T's or systems people or whatever the case may be. The bottom line is you cannot compromise on this, okay? You cannot allow somebody to say, yeah, but that's not the way I do things. Because as soon as you do that, you've now got a cancer inside your business and are now undermining what's going on. So if I make one thing clear on this, we've got other organisations that introduce businesses to our solutions, where they're consultants and so forth. They will go out to those businesses and they will manage this process with their clients by saying, for the next month, we're the ones that are going to hold everybody in this business accountable for implementing these systems, because they're trying to change culture as quickly as possible. All right? And any time somebody does something that's not inside the system, they've got to be accountable for it. All right? And they're changing culture really quickly, okay? Because within a month or two, now it's standard practice. I can tell you, as a business 10 years ago, we didn't have this type of infrastructure. Anybody could walk into our business now and in 10 seconds they'll know exactly what's going on and what the future looks like, okay? It changes everything, and it means you're capable of doing so much more with so much less.
And look, just from CCIQ's perspective, we've obviously gone through this change in the last 6 months, and really it was a two-way thing. Firstly, we've introduced a system that took away a lot of the pain from previous systems, where we had people who were entering all sorts of data into the system. You know, you could go to a record for a business and you'd pull up a contact and they'd be called John XXXXXXX because somebody hadn't bothered to take the time to ensure that record is correct. When we then sent John XXXXXXX a letter, you can understand that John XXXXX was really annoyed. So we made it a non-negotiable. It is part of the performance description and the metrics that all of our staff within CCIQ are measured against. They have to have an adherence to process because it makes their life easier in the long run, and it makes our information easier in the long run, and it allows them to achieve their other incentives and rewards and, you know, bonuses and goals and so on, because they've got the tools to do the job with accurate information. A question in from Terry around data. So where's the data held and how's it secured?
Okay. It's all data is held in third-party data centres. So data is encrypted as it travels into the data centre. It's also encrypted inside the database. In terms of the disaster recovery side of it, so let's say a data centre burns down, what happens to our data? So what we have is we have a number of layers of backup and disaster recovery. So you've got the production servers, which are in a data centre, and backups in that same server. Then in a totally separate database or data centre, separately geographically distant, that data is captured there as well. And so the disaster recovery framework provides that in worst case scenario, if the data centre was to burn down or be flooded or whatever the case may be, the disaster recovery site would be up and running within 15 minutes, and you'd have a loss of about 2 minutes of data. So very minimal on that. Just so you understand, our clients range from very small businesses, one-person businesses, through to public companies. And so obviously, particularly when you're dealing with public companies and larger institutions and organisations like CCIQ, etc., there's a requirement there around the issues of security, data recovery, etc., etc. So a whole range of things that we've done on that. And again, a lot of Q&A question answers on our site if there are other questions around that.
And a final question from Stephen around their challenge has been that is to get a CRM that integrates with other productivity tools, and that's been the excuse for not moving forward. Can we recommend an easily integrated CRM? Look, I think we've covered that, but just to say that from, I guess, the MYP perspective, there are more and more services and more third-party bits of software being connected with each and every week.
Absolutely, and if you've got a particular type of software that you want to integrate with, we have APIs. If they have APIs, then the time and cost associated with establishing those linkages is probably going to be quite small. We're working with a number of organisations at the moment where we're connecting those links because they've got particular software that does certain things. In this particular case, they're in the trades sector, and so we're doing an integration with a piece of software that provides solutions in that particular market space. So certainly, just because there may not be that linkage there now doesn't mean this shouldn't be part of the opportunity and conversation. Certainly, we're happy to have that conversation.
Look, thank you very much to everyone who submitted in their questions today. Look, as always, we're happy to take questions offline. You can send them through to us at the events email at CCIQ, and we can follow up with Stephen at a later date. Thanks also to Stephen from MYP for presenting his insights into how you can go about simplifying your business, and also you can manage your customers for growth. Check your inboxes over the next couple of days. You'll receive a copy of today's slides, a recording of the webinar, and a link to the offer that we mentioned. Really, you know, $160 a month for all of those tools is a fantastic offer. So I'd encourage you, if you're thinking about a CRM, if you're looking to switch, if you're thinking about an events tool, have a look at this piece of software. It's what we use at CCIQ, and I can only recommend it from you know, the metrics and the difference it's made to us as an organisation. We've also got some events coming up over the coming weeks. We've got an event in Brisbane on the 13th of February, which will talk about our digital readiness study findings. It's free to come along, so come along and join us for a cocktail, and we'll take you through the latest research into how Queensland businesses are coping with the shift to the digital economy. And we've also got a webinar on the 24th of February around financial markets and what 2014 is likely to hold for our investments and supers and so on and so forth. And that's in partnership with our partners at Wilson HTM. So head along to cciq.com.au/events where you can sign up for these events, and as members, the majority of these are free. So thank you all for coming along and giving us your time today. We hope you enjoyed the webinar, and we look forward to welcoming you to a CCIQ webinar or event in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.